why Washington lies about everything, I thought I'd start by mentioning a few statements that government has made, and maybe you can tell me whether you think it's a truth or a lie. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. The history buffs in the audience might know that one of the first things the federal government did was to outlaw free speech with the Sedition Act. As soon as George Washington left town, that's exactly what they did. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a lie, isn't it? What city doesn't have a gun control law? We are winning the war on drugs. So those are just a few off the top of my head of the things that I think about. And if you're a liar in business, there's a penalty to be paid. There's a market feedback mechanism. Consumers will catch on if you defraud them. You won't get repeat customers. Suppliers are not going to want to do business with you. Your competitors will have every incentive to point out your lies or your fraud. You may be sued, and so forth. And that doesn't guarantee honesty, but it sure provides a reward for honesty in terms of customer loyalty and profits. If you want to teach people about ethical problems in society, well, government is where the real big problems are. It's like thinking, well, there's a fly on the carpet here, and that's a problem. Whereas there's a dinosaur out there, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, charging toward this room. Let's ignore that. That's nothing to worry. That's nothing to worry about. Let's get the fly. The incentives are totally different. In government, there is no market feedback mechanism that penalizes you for being a liar. The government gives itself a tremendous degree of autonomy compared to businesses who constantly have to strive to please their customers. Barney Frank, for goodness sake, is still in the Congress, and when I lived in the D.C. area years ago, and I would read the Washington Post, I think it's been 15, maybe 20 years now. I can't remember exactly when. But Barney got caught, his boyfriend was running a prostitution ring out of the basement of their house. And it was on the front page of the Washington Post for a whole week. And of course, nothing happened to him other than he's been reelected 10 times. There's so much autonomy, you can get away with lying. There's no penalty for lying. And on top of that, there's the economic principle that's known as rational ignorance. That people are rationally ignorant. That is, most of us spend most of our time educating ourselves on how to do our job, how to raise our families, and so forth. And you don't really spend that much time educating yourself on social policy. In fact, when I talk about this to college students, I bring up on the computer in the classroom the alphabetical listing of federal agencies. If you just Google that, there's a big, long list. And if you just pick one or two of them out, there'll be a brief description of what it does. And it sounds like, it's hieroglyphics. So no human mind could possibly understand 1% of what the government does. And therefore, we're all rationally ignorant. And that enables the government to get away with a lot of this misinformation that it spreads to us. I did a little research on how Prohibition came about in the 1920s. What was the crusade for Prohibition? Who was for it? What did they say? And one of the things I ran across is that the Women's Christian Temperance Union had a Department of Scientific Temperance, and they got all the public schools in the country to teach students about alcohol consumption. And so this was a government program. This is before Prohibition. This is sort of laying the groundwork for Prohibition. So I thought I'd read to you these things, and maybe some of you are medical professionals, and you can tell us whether these are truth or lies. When alcohol passes down the throat, it burns off skin, leaving it bare and burning. Alcohol causes the heart to beat many unnecessary times. This was taught to every public school child in America. Alcohol turns the blood to water. And finally, an invalid man who never drinks liquor will get well, whereas a drinking man will surely die. Another example of government lying. The oil industry in America was invented right after the Civil War. John D. Rockefeller founded Standard Oil Company in 1866. And as soon as he did that, the government began predicting that we're going to run out of oil at any minute, and unless the government takes over. And so let me give you a few examples. I have the chart here that I'll read from. 1866, the U.S. Revenue Commission said synthetics will be available if oil production ends. So they were already, the year John D. Rockefeller founded Standard Oil, they were predicting the end to oil. In 1885, the U.S. Geological Survey said there's little or no chance of finding oil in California, but then 8 billion barrels were pumped from that date to the present. Then in 1891, the Geological Survey said there's little or no chance of finding oil in Texas or Kansas. 1914, the U.S. Bureau of Mines, the total future domestic production of oil is only 5.7 billion barrels, but there have been sort of like 50 billion barrels since then. 1939, the U.S. Department of Interior said U.S. oil supplies will last only 13 more years. And so you see, I guess you get the picture of all these crazy predictions. And of course, the purpose of this was always to try to make the case for a government takeover of the energy industries, because leaving it to the market, we're going to run out of everything. Another example was poverty statistics. There's an economist named Edgar Browning who gave a presidential address to the Southern Economic Association some years ago, and he did a lot of research on the effects of the welfare state and the economics of poverty, and he took a look at these claims that the government was making at the time that quote, the top 20% of income earners receive 44% of total income, as though that's a bad thing necessarily. I guess they're supposed to receive exactly 20% of the total income. But when the government makes pronouncements like this and says, therefore, we need a more progressive tax system to redistribute the wealth, to quote Barack Obama, they say what they do is, this is based on, at the time, was based on pre-tax income. So they're looking at people who make, say, $100,000 a year, but they don't subtract out the taxes they pay in order to exaggerate how much money they have, what their disposable income is. And at the same time, they don't count any of the in-kind benefits that the welfare recipients got. And in some places, at the time Browning was writing this, in some places, people were getting $20,000 or $30,000 a year worth of in-kind benefits, daycare allowances, and that sort of thing. And so they intentionally just skew the statistics that way. The government is always declaring that there are a lot more farmers than there actually are out there. And for example, it's said that there are 2.2 million farmers, but 1 million of these people denied that they were farmers. One of the definitions was, I think if you own any kind of livestock, like a horse, and I have friends who have like young children and they buy them a horse and they keep the horse in a stable somewhere. And on weekends, the girls go out and ride the horse. And, so they're farmers because they own livestock. And so whenever the next farm bill comes around, they want to be able to say, this is going to help 2.2 million farmers.